this topic becomes all the more important. Uh, what is caste? What is gender oppression? And what could be a solution to end all these types of oppression and exploitation of the working class? What is there any common ground? What kind of solidarities we can strive for? So I think now we can open the house for the discussion. If anybody has a question or somebody wants to add, or if somebody has any disagreement on any of the points which Abhinav has made, you all are welcome. So you can just raise your hand. Mic will be given to you.
Okay, so I have something to add. When in the later part of the talk, just like 2 minutes ago, you mentioned that the spontaneity of mass movements could lead to a regime change, but not systematic change. And you cited Arab Spring and Sri Lanka as of now as an example. Well, I just wanted to cite the CA and RC movement in the late 2019 and early 2020 before COVID came as also like an example, because it was a very mass movement all around India, but because of its spontaneity and lack of organization and ideology, the not understanding fascism, Hindutva fascism in its class character and how it relates, how it comes from capitalism itself, was one of the many reasons why that movement, and also because of the pandemic, did not lead to anywhere, even though it was so huge. So yeah, I wanted to add that.
I'm Thirumal. I'm a software scientist. Yeah, I'm a computer scientist and a farmer. So my interests are in basically how computer science could be as a tool, as an optimization tool, could be used to help workers gain basically workers help themselves in organizing themselves and own the means of production. So from cooperatives. So my question was with respect to Foucault, right? So you were saying that the generalization comes from without, right? But that itself is a negation, right, of the dialectic. Right? Why was it not immediately criticized? Because the generalization is the dialectic. I mean, that's how Marx says it, right? I mean, the dialectic theory is that, right? That as the experiences, the smaller experiences build into the bigger experience, right? How I understand that. So when you say that, then Foucault should have been criticized on that itself, right? So that's one that I wanted to ask. The other one was the exploitation or the suppression of people not because the one that you were saying that the white a white does not oppress a black because he's white. Or if I would like to say, I mean, if I can extend that, a Jat in Haryana would not exploit a Dalit if not for their economic relationship, right? But yeah, on that note, right, like for example in Telangana, in our village, right, so even in Dalits, even among Dalits, there is an other subcaste called Sindhu. I mean, they do the they are the artists. So there is a hierarchy between the Dalits and these artists, but I don't see a material relation, that exploitation, that's not existing, but still for the sake of being, I mean, that's how I understand it. Maybe I'm wrong, but for the sake of being that, okay, that I have that everybody, even though are exploited, but still want to exploit somebody, not materially, but so that I would, I mean, that's I would really want to know that that's the second one. And the third one, the last one is, what you're saying, the organization and the ideology, right? So I think the best example an example of that is the PKK, right? What is that? Yeah. So Öcalan, influenced by what's his name, the New York professor, right? Ecology of Freedom. Ecology of Freedom. I think that's his book. So that's another example. I just wanted to quote that out.
How computer science can be used for the benefit of workers, that I think Bhanu would be is in a better position to respond to, because I'm not very, मेरा हाथ बहुत तंग है उसमें.
No, it's not a question.
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
Okay, you are working on that. Yeah, that would be great, because basically, see, knowledge about computer and software, it is what Marx would have called general intellect, the accumulation of the intellectual knowledge which becomes a part of whole production process, materialized by the intellectual worker. He represents the general intellect. So in that sense, yes, it can be used. What material forms that would assume, I can't think of one. About the second question, I mean, why Foucault was not criticized immediately? He was criticized immediately by various Marxist-Leninists in Europe. When Foucauldian theory reached other parts of the world, Marxist-Leninists did criticize him. What I was saying, that Foucault has written many books, and many topics have been dealt by him, from madness to prison to normativity to civilization, everything. So there is a unitary thread that runs through all works of Foucault. So Marxist-Leninists responded to Foucault, criticized his theory of power knowledge, but not in totality. So what I was referring to, that Foucault's entire philosophical 𝐷𝐤𝐬𝐦 and worldview needs to be criticized in a systematic and consistent manner. There is no single work like that. So there are many different books, different papers, different articles which have criticized different aspects of Foucault's theory. But the entire class character of Foucault's theory, and how its philosophy justifies and the whole status quo, and not only justifies, it denies any agency to change, because change can be done only by collective resistance, and he assumes collectivity itself as an oppressive thing. So philosophically itself, it denies any agency to change. So in that sense, one consistent systematic critique of entire philosophical 𝐷𝐤𝐬𝐦 and worldview of Foucault, that has to be there, and our group is working on that, our organization. But it is not that Foucault was not immediately criticized. Foucault was immediately criticized by French Marxist itself when he started churning out these nonsensical theories. So yeah.
Is it because of the odiousness of Stalinism that I could sense that what you said?
Yeah, I'm not sure what Stalinism is, because this is a term used as a pejorative term. But I think if Stalinism is anything, it is not so much different from Leninism. So I don't know what Stalinism is. Stalin was.
Maybe as an
Yeah.
example, the gulags. You could say Stalinism. If you conflate Stalinism to gulags.
Yeah, I mean, see, Robespierre understood the relation between virtue and terror. And all Marxists also understood the relation between virtue and terror. So Lenin asked some of the critics of Russian socialism, when during war communism, the kulaks and the bourgeoisie were repressed because they were allying with imperialist countries to crush the proletarian state of Soviet Union. So Kautsky was like very angry that Marxists are doing that, and even other social democrats and revisionists were like aghast at the repression going on in the Soviet Union. So Lenin said कि when you guys had your 1789, violence was full of virtue. When the working class is using violence to suppress the reactionary bourgeoisie who is trying to regain its lost paradise with the help of 14 imperialist countries of Europe, our violence becomes bad. So yes, as long as there is class society, there will be, as Engels said, state is an affair of, state is an arena where affairs are determined by bayonets and rifles. And socialist state is a working class state, but it is still a state. Because if there are no classes in society, there will be no need for state. That will be a classless society, communist society. But till the socialist society is there, I'm not at all apologetic. If tomorrow socialism comes in India, we will have our gulags. Do you think those who are living in antillas of 260 rooms and those who are oppressing agrarian Dalit workers in villages of Maharashtra, in Andhra, in Telangana, in Haryana, they will give up power peacefully? When the revolution is consummated, they will fight teeth to teeth with us in armed way. So they will have to be repressed, isn't it? What else can be done? So about gulags, I don't think reaction was to that. In fact, till Stalin's time, Times magazine of US was giving him the award of Man of Year because Soviet Union single-handedly defeated Hitler in the Second World War. You can see the cover of Times magazine. Till 1953, when Stalin died, he was called Uncle Joe in Western press because he was presented as the savior of Europe, the one who defeated Hitler. And when he died, all kinds of अब गिद्धों को तो ऐसे ही मतलब वो कर दिया गया है, बदनाम कर दिया गया. गिद्ध तो अच्छा काम करते हैं, मतलब they eat the corpses and prevent, but using only in the literary way. All the intellectual gidd, they started, mudslinging on Stalin. Stalin did commit mistakes, but the mistakes that the Western imperialist media talks about, those are certainly not mistakes of Stalin. Gulag was not a mistake of Stalin, neither was labor camps mistakes of Stalin. The mistake of Stalin was that in 1936, when collectivization in agriculture was done, he assumed that antagonistic classes have ceased to exist in the Soviet Union. And he thinks now the only task before socialism in Soviet Union is to develop the productive forces as rapidly as possible, because communism or classless society can come only in the stage of abundance of production. So therefore, once private property relations have been socialized, the production relations have been completely socialized, or the socialist transformation of production relations have been completed. So that was the mistake of Stalin. In one word, productivism. Missing the point that class struggle was still the key link. If class struggle was not the key link in 1936, and if there were no antagonistic classes in the Soviet Union in 1936, why was a state needed? So Stalin replied to that, due to foreign infiltration and encirclement. But that is not a very good explanation for the existence of state. The state existed, and empirically and symptomatically, Stalin also engaged in class struggle against the capitalist rulers within the Soviet Union. But he could not wage a theoretical struggle against the idea of productivism and theory of development of productive forces. That was the mistake. It was a philosophical mistake. It was a serious mistake of political economy. What Stalin is charged with, कि 20 million लोगों को मार दिया स्टालिन ने, तो 20 million लोग 25 billion वर्ल्ड वॉर में मरे थे, और 20 million को स्टालिन ने मार दिया, और रूस की आबादी फिर कितनी बची? मतलब they are not even good at maths, these slanderers, कि 20 million perished in the gulags 25 million perished in the Second World War, and still Soviet Union had a population of 60 million. And if you can, those who want to read what happened in Stalin's period, there are many good books. There is a good book by a journalist, Anna Louise Strong. Anna Louise Strong was imprisoned during Stalin's period in Soviet Union. He has written a book called Stalin Era. Excellent book. American journalist imprisoned by Stalin in Soviet Union and wrote a book about Stalin after she returned. And you can read many other books. There are books by, there is a very good book called Another View of Stalin by Ludo Martins. So these books, now imperialist media dominates, so it, bombards us with slandering and false information. But yes, it was a Foucauldian postmodernism and the postmodernism of many other thinkers in 1960s France. It was a pathological reaction, but not to Stalin. It was a pathological reaction to collapse of socialism in Soviet Union after the 20th Congress in 1956. And then the conversion of Soviet Union from a socialist country into a social imperialist country, which intervened in many countries, imperialist intervention in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Afghanistan. And that led to a pathological reaction. Those who could not make a differentiation between socialism and revisionism mistook the crimes of social imperialism as some inherent problem with Marxism and socialism. And that was how Foucault was a student of a Marxist, Althusser, but he developed in a different direction. That was one of the representative figures of that pathological reaction. Secondly, I did not say that everywhere the social oppression will be directly linked to economic exploitation. Even Jats everywhere do not oppress, because once a social oppression is institutionalized, as I said, it develops a relative autonomy. And relative autonomy means the ideology of social oppression percolates within the masses also. Why? Because it is the ruling class which controls the media, the schools, all the means of mental production. And that is why it can make those ideas prevail. And that is why once an ideology of social oppression starts functioning, it attains relative autonomy from direct economic exploitation. So it is not necessary for, even within Dalits there is hierarchy. It is not necessary to be a direct relation of economic exploitation in order for me to oppress someone socially. It is not needed, because if that ideology has become socially hegemonic, I would be affected with that too. Even if I don't get any economic benefit. In fact, Jats don't get economic benefit from social oppression. In fact, they are harmed. Their class interests are also harmed. For example, the Maratha agitation, which happened a few years back, when there was a rape of a Maratha girl by some youth who were claimed to be, allegedly Dalit youths. And then there was a movement of Marathas to either end reservation of Dalits or give them reservation. Why this movement happened at that time? That was the worst period of agrarian crisis in Maharashtra. Most of the Kunbi Maratha farmers were getting proletarianized. There was no job creation. Economic crisis overall. And in economic crisis, when there is scarcity of job, inflation, everything, economic hardships are there. At that time, the ruling class, the 200 Maratha families control most of the sugar mills, most of the politically important posts, most of the factories, most of the big farms. 200 Maratha families. So how can the 200 Maratha rich families, capitalist families, deflect the anger of Maratha lower class and working class from them to someone else? They create and construct a false enemy, an imaginary enemy. That who is responsible for your joblessness and problems? See, the jobs are being taken away by Dalits through reservation. And that is how the real class contradiction is misarticulated by the ruling class as a caste contradiction. So, are the Marathas getting harmed by Dalits in some way? No. Actually, if Dalits are oppressed, they are given less wage. We all know that average wage for Dalit workers is less than the overall average wage, national average wage. So if the Dalit worker get less wage than the average, then it allows the capitalist class to create a downward pressure on the wages of non-Dalit workers also. It is simple mathematics. If I can hire women and Dalits at lower wage, then the oppression of women and Dalits, is it benefiting the other non-Dalits workers or harming? It is harming. So actually, Jats or Maratha, the common working class, the common lower middle class, they are not getting benefited in any way from the social oppression of Dalits. In fact, their economic rights are downgraded and curtailed, because in the market economy, the simple logic of market ensures that if one section of society is overexploited due to excess of vulnerability due to his identity as a Dalit, then you can also depress the wages of others due to competition between laborers, which is imposed on the working class by capitalism. So what I was trying to say was not that in each and every individual case, the social oppressor is getting economic benefit out of social oppression. What I was trying to say is that social oppression as a system and as an institution and as an ideology originates within the framework of class exploitation. But once it has originated and institutionalized, it also becomes relatively autonomous from economic exploitation. So it is very much possible for a working class caste Hindu to socially oppress an upper middle class Dalit. It is very much possible. It happens all the time. So in that sense, I am not trying to reduce social oppression to economic exploitation. On the contrary, I am saying they are relatively autonomous, but there is a history and there is a causal link. Yeah. And yeah, PKK Ocalan, I mean, he takes influence from many, that New York professor, I'm forgetting his name, and also from Cornelius Castoriadis, the libertarian socialism, democratic socialism, etc. I'm not so sure how far that project is going to succeed. The Kurdish buffer state created there in Rojava is also due to inter-imperialist rivalry. Huh? Yeah, yes, yeah. Murray. So that state, the Kurdish state in Rojava, it is more a product of inter-imperialist rivalry. And look at the positions taken by PKK on the Syrian civil war. It was a reactionary position, supporting the US imperialism. So in that sense, how far Öcalan's ideology is socialist and how far we can take it as an example of successful application of ideology and organization for attainment of a socialist state, I'm not too sure about that. But it can happen. I mean, they have a very glorious history of brave struggle. The ideological leadership is problematic. And Öcalan is sitting there in prison in Europe. And what is going on there and his own theories, there is a lot. I mean, I think he has been disciplined to a great extent due to his imprisonment. And that is why such class collaborationist theories are coming out from his writings.
So, K. Balagopal happens to be one of the widely read public intellectuals who passed away anyway a decade ago. Towards the end of his life, he made like scathing attacks on Marxism. In one of his attacks on Marxism, what he says is Marxism fails to recognize that caste relations, like for instance the example that he cited among Dalits and Nithis, is it? Sindhus. Yeah, some of the caste relations should actually be considered as production relations. And because Marx did not have a good idea of how society is organized in Asiatic situation, he left these things open, and it is the duty of true Marxists, as he puts it, is to actually consider these discourses as part of production relations and rework. I want you to react to that because he is one of like widely read. I'm pretty sure like most people here have read him. Thank you.
About Bal Gopal, as Comrade Bhanu asked the question, caste is certainly a part of production relation. Marx never said anything more than that about caste that capitalism, when it will develop in India, and at the time of Marx, whatever limited capitalist development was happening through development of railway and limited industrialization and building of dams and all, he said that the creation of industrial and urban life will lead to the decline of economic registers of class. Marx said nothing more than that, nothing less than that. This was something that Ambedkar also said, that urbanization and industrialization will lead to breakup of economic dimensions of class. So that is why he was a big supporter of industrialization, state-led industrialization and urbanization. And in that, Marx was correct. Obviously, Marx could not have known about Indian situation, but on the basis of that, I mean, many people think that capital is the tagline of capital is capital, a contribution to the critique of political economy. The first book is book on production, the second book is book on circulation, the third book is book on capitalist production as a whole. It doesn't say capitalism, everything you wanted to know about capital, everything you wanted to know about capitalism. So Marx could not have written about, and this is very much obvious. The question is whether Indian Marxists understood caste or not. As far as what D.D. Kosambi called official communist parties, CPI and CPM, they certainly could not understand caste. But it is not the failure of Marxism as such, as a theory capable of understanding caste. It is the failure of Indian social democrats who at one time said caste is class in India. At other times they went to the two systems theory, that for class exploitation we need Marxism, for caste oppression we need Ambedkarism, and surrendered before Ambedkarism. And they tried to present different incorrect views about the relationship between caste and class in India. But the Marxist historians like D.D. Kosambi, R.S. Sharma, Suvira Jaiswal, D.N. Jha, they have, in my opinion, understood, obviously it's an ongoing project, but they have accurately traced the origin of Varna caste system, and they have accurately understood the relation and the changing relation between Varna caste system and class struggle in the history of India since the ancient times up till the modern times. In that sense, I'll have to read Comrade Bal Gopal to see from where he's coming. But if he's just saying that caste is part of production relation, it is very much accepted by the more accurate Marxist intellectuals and historians who have written about caste. It is nothing new. But caste as a part of production relation is its register, economic register as a part of production relation, it is declining. That is also true. Irfan Habib has written a very good article called Caste in Indian History. And there he traces one thing very accurately, that we have theorized in one of our articles, Historiography of Cast, some methodological interventions. Our position is simply this. Once caste became a system of social oppression, there was a relationship of correspondence between class and caste. Every time there was a major shift in relations of production and the class hierarchy of society, there were fissions and fusions within the caste hierarchy also. Occupations of different castes changed, ruling positions of different castes changed. In different regions of India, new castes emerged as the ruling castes. The new castes were re-theorized in the Brahminical scriptures. So all these changes were happening precisely because the dynamics of class relations and production relations was changing. So every time there was a major shift, a tectonic shift in mode of production and production relations, you'll see a corresponding change in the caste system and Varna system also. And in that correspondence has been maintained up till now, and in that correspondence a major shift came with the development of capitalism in India, because capitalist mode of production co-opted and sublated those elements of caste system which had no contradiction with capitalist mode of production. For example, caste endogamy. Capitalism loves private property. Caste endogamy makes private property even more sacred than any capitalist would have imagined. So there is no contradiction between caste endogamy and capitalist mode of production. But there is a contradiction between untouchability and commensal prejudices and hereditary labor division and capitalist mode of production. And this is a known fact, even Ambedkarites know it and accept it, that with the development of industrialization and urbanization, these registers of caste have declined. Hereditary labor division, commensal prejudices, and untouchability. So so how caste is part of production relation? In the sense of relations of distribution. Because relation of production consists of three things: relation of ownership, division of labor, and relation of distribution. In division of labor, in certain exceptional occupation, hereditary labor division is there, so caste is partially a part of that division of labor. For example, the housekeepers, safai karmi, cleaners. In relations of distribution, if you look at the distribution of resources, Dalits are very badly placed there in terms of land ownership, in terms of average wages, in terms of factory ownership, in terms of share in government. That is not part of political economy, posts, but yes, economic resources. So distribution, due to historical, legacy of caste varna system, that relation of distribution is still there. Of all landless population, 48% comes from Dalit caste. So it is very much clear and indicator of the fact that the relations of distribution, to a larger degree and to a lesser degree, the division of labor still has elements of caste relations there. So caste in that sense, yes, it is a part of economic base, and the ideology based on caste discrimination and that form of social oppression, that is Brahminical ideology, it is certainly part of the present capitalist ideological superstructure. So one has to divide one into two and talk with precision what we are talking about when we are talking about caste as a part of production relation. Yes, those who reduced caste to superstructure were making equally nonsensical argument. Those who are arguing that caste is the class of India, totally incorrect. Every caste in India is today highly class differentiated. That is not true, and that is why we argue that one has to understand the dialectical relation, and that dialectical relation we have termed as the correspondence theory. It is there. Anand can provide our organization's work on caste and relationship of caste with class.
Thanks for making a wonderful evening. My name is Shantaram. I'm basically from Tamil Nadu, working as a government servant in Hyderabad. So I'm requesting you to put some light on a Dravidian movement. Only two things we are still prizing or considering Dravidian movement as from Tamil Nadu. So number one is, comparatively, we have good social indicators comparatively. Let it be health or per capita. Point number two is the fanatic Hindutva was finding it difficult to penetrate into Tamil Nadu. So what the let it be Communist Party or Dravidian Party or the Dalit parties, they are all prizing or considering a Dravidian movement as the place. Whatever, as you said, the Dalit has an identity or Communist has an identity, but they will grab the Periyar ideology or especially Justice Party ideology. They won't give it up. And additional to the class conflict or the Dalit conflict, they will add it on. So there is a good combination going on. That is what they are finding it very difficult to penetrate. But it is diluting. I'm not denying it. But still it is giving some hope. And additional to that, as you said, we have more identities. But where in Tamil Nadu, we always go with Brahmin, non-Brahmin identity on the top. On the lower political lines, there are so many divisions. But on the policy level, always we see Brahmin, non-Brahmin divisions. And I don't know, maybe right from the Justice Party that seed was sown. As you said, the Velalas or Chettiars, they are all, as you said, in rural Tamil Nadu, they are dominant and they have persecuted many Dalits. But when they reach Madras, they are being discriminated. There, the Justice Party came into being. My question is, can this Brahmin, non-Brahmin division be a weapon to counter the forces from Delhi?
I mean, this question requires a very, large discussion. I mean, this question itself demands a separate, presentation. But I will make some preliminary observations. One is about the Dravidian movement. I mean, it started as a militant materialist movement. When Periyar was there, he was a militant materialist, atheist, and totally challenged Brahminical ideology, irrational ideas, non-scientific ideas, and he believed in egalitarianism. In fact, when he visited Soviet Union, he was very impressed by the development of Soviet Union, the spread of rationality, the spread of atheism, the spread of science education in Soviet Union. And in that sense, Periyar must be considered one of the stalwarts of anti-caste movement in India. There is no doubt about it. But Dravidian movement, I have very limited knowledge about that. I have only read Periyar's writing, but the history of the Dravidian movement I know only insofar as I have read some articles in newspapers or op-ed editorials or something like that. I still have to read about the history of that. Whatever, fragmentary knowledge I have about the history of Dravidian movement, that it has degenerated itself into, a movement based on caste-based domination itself. And it is true that when it comes to political executive, Brahmins are still more represented than the dominant ruling class caste of Tamil Nadu. But I would say that that is true for Haryana also. For example, Jats are the dominant, the rich Jat farmers are the ruling class in Haryana. And they are very less represented in the administration of Haryana. Most of the, bureaucracy, you go, police officers and, all the limbs of state apparatus, you will find very few Jats. Most are Brahmins and people who have migrated from different areas, from other castes. They are represented there. I would say, for example, in case of Haryana, they are not so much in need of government jobs. It is only a political tactics that they raise this question that why are we underrepresented in the administration, political executive, in bureaucracy, in the state apparatus. Actually, they don't even promote their sons too much for that, because they are already in a different occupation, in a very dominant position. They don't feel the need for it. But they raise this question whenever the questions of realpolitik come. So whenever they have to deal with other factions of the ruling bloc, they would raise this distinction between Brahmin and non-Brahmin to their own tactical advantage, and to mobilize support among non-Brahmins for this degenerated Dravidian movement, and they are quite successful in that. So in that sense, I am not too optimistic about the future about Dravidian movement, because it is true that due to the legacy of Periyar and more egalitarian ethos in the pores of Tamil society and more solid foundation of rationalism and scientific worldview in Tamil society, the overall education, the cultural consciousness, the political consciousness is such that BJP will find it hard to breach that fortress. And my own reading is that BJP would find it quite difficult to breach that fortress for coming 4 or 5 elections. That is true. But it will slowly break, because BJP is distinguished from all other parties by 2 things. One, fascist ideology, and second, cadre-based organization. No one could have imagined that BJP would win 1 seat in Legislative Assembly of Kerala. But the RSS guy who was organizer in that area kept working without any expectation for immediate gain. He kept working for 2 decades in that particular region. And finally they won that seat. So this will happen, and it cannot be opposed standing on the platform of Dravidian movement. Immediately, yes, it will create many challenges for penetration of BJP. Ultimately, it won't. Secondly, the class interest of the Dravidian ruling class, Tamil bourgeoisie, the class interest of Tamil bourgeoisie and the big bourgeoisie of India are not diametrically opposite. The only friendly contradiction is that they want a larger share in the appropriated surplus at the national level. So MRF, a company originated from Tamil Nadu, established by a Tamil engineer, it doesn't aim to sell MRF products only to Tamilians. So the question of, for example, Hindi imposition. So we often ask, who is the enemy? Who is imposing Hindi and English? है ना? At the peril of other languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam. Who is it? Is it the bourgeoisie of Hindi Patti? But Hindi Patti has no big bourgeoisie. If you look at the top biggest corporates, a couple of corporates are coming from UP, this Bimaru states, JP Builder or someone like that. But most of the biggest capitalists, number one, they come from Gujarat, number two, from among Rajasthani Marwadis, number three, from Maharashtra, number four, from Tamil Nadu. It is one of the biggest bourgeoisie in India. And who is imposing Hindi? The enemy of the Tamil people is not some far away Hindi Patti capitalist class. It is the capitalist class in Tamil Nadu. Because it is the Tamil employers have no problem in employing labor from Hindi Patti, talking with them in Hindi, doing all of their advertisement. 88 to 90% of advertisement of MRF happens in Hindi and English, not in Tamil. And MRF, since wants control over entire domestic market as far as the tire rubber products are concerned, it wants a contact language, Hindi and English, imposed, and it does contribute to that imposition of Hindi and English. The Tamil bourgeoisie itself, and at the political level, the bourgeoisie will divide the masses. You look at these Hindians coming with chewing pan and snatching away our jobs. So this is how bourgeoisie, the economic rationalism obliges them to impose Hindi and English on their own national people. And at the political level, they will use this imposition that they have done of Hindi and English to divide the working class of Tamil Nadu and workers, migrant workers coming from Bihar, Uttar Pradesh or Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh. So that is in that sense, the policy of Tamil bourgeoisie is not so much different from the big bourgeoisie represented by the BJP right now. So there is no fundamental contradiction of interest. The contradiction is friendly. What is that contradiction? Give us a greater share in the appropriated surplus at the national level. Otherwise, we will stoke up the subnationalism here, linguistic subnationalism here. And that is not more than a bargaining tactical weapon for Tamil bourgeoisie. They are not so much concerned about the fate of Tamil language. So in that sense, I think, yes, immediately that bourgeoisie and their alliance, the kind of coalition they have formed with the Social Democrats and Congress and MK Stalin, all of them, they will prove to be effective for 3-4 more elections. But this will decline because there is no foundational conflict of interest, and secondly, this movement itself has degenerated. So, but I say that with the caveat that I have to read about it first, the history of the movement. These are just preliminary and tentative comments.
Yeah, good evening, sir. My name is Praveen.
Please don't call Periyar.
Good evening. My name is Praveen. I'm a law student. I have a question that why Marx's ideology was not impacting on students and not attracting the students in today's context. The youth, as a student and youth, young one, I am asking this question.
So, yeah, today why, there was a time when generations and generations were attracted towards Marxism. That was the period of high tide of revolutions and socialist regimes in the world. But any new ideology or any new progressive revolutionary class develops towards establishing its rule sustainably in many rounds and cycles. Right now we are going through a cycle of defeat. And during the cycle of defeat, not all students and youth will be attracted towards Marxism. Those students and youth who constitute the advanced vanguard of the student youth population. And advanced vanguard has nothing to do with bourgeois education or bourgeois skills. It has to do with the question whether a particular student or youth hates injustice and inequality or not. He relates himself with Tata Ambani or he relates himself with a common working mass. Those students are still getting attracted with Marxism, and in fact, during the past couple of years, we have been talking about the revival of Marxism. Penguin Publishers, which publishes the best English translation of Capital, reported that the sale of Marx's Capital multiplied by 800% in the last 3 years. So there is a rising interest in Marxism. More and more.
Is it globally or Indian?
Globally. Globally, 800% rise is a big rise in sale of Marxist literature. So even if today less students and youth are attracted towards Marxism, we should not bother about it. You see, if you have a drum of milk and you want to make it into curd, you need this much of curd, right? These few students and youngsters who are being attracted to Marxism in the search of a progressive revolutionary ideology are that one spoonful of curd that will convert the whole drum of milk into curd. So one has to understand the whole motion of history in that sense.
Good evening, my name is Harish. So I have two questions. One question is, in the times of identity politics, are there any examples of revolutions that has ideology and organization successfully revolutionized? And second thing, is it possible in the times of information bias to develop an ideology which is right or which has strong base, because there is a lot of information is one-sided? So these are the two questions.
Yeah, in the age of identity politics, whether there, as Comrade Harish asked, whether there are examples of revolutions. I mean, identity politics precisely came into existence due to the decline of revolutionary movement and reversal and defeat. So since the emergence of identity politics and establishment of its hegemony in different movements, we have not witnessed any major revolution since then. Because identity politics is precisely the result of completion of one cycle of revolution, one round of revolution. And that is how even the bourgeois revolutions and all revolutions have happened in history. I mean, the first attempts of a bourgeois revolution, I mean, if you look at the beginning of a bourgeois class struggle against feudalism, it starts with Renaissance. I mean, the first time in the arena of art and philosophy, the idea of anthropocentric society was established. The hegemony of church and religion and feudal lords was challenged. It happened in the 15th century. Inauguration of Renaissance is generally considered the writings of Petrarch and Boccaccio, 1453, I guess, 15th century. And it took 450 years for the bourgeois class to defeat feudalism decisively. The most glorious bourgeois revolution failed, the French Revolution of 1789. Monarchy was restored, but since bourgeoisie was the rising progressive class of that stage of history, it finally defeated feudal lords, taking under its leadership peasant masses and working class. Because at that time the contradiction between the proletariat and bourgeoisie was not the principal one, because both of them had a bigger common enemy in the shape of church and feudalism. So it took 400 years for them to establish. 1848 revolutions were the bourgeois revolutions which firmly and decisively and in an unchallenged fashion established capitalism. So first round of bourgeois revolutions failed. Oliver Cromwell's glorious revolution, the French Revolution, these were the first round revolutions. They failed, and after many years of reversal and defeat, bourgeoisie again rose up, taking under its leadership proletariat and working masses, and at the same time proletariat was also rising up, but that's a different interesting story. But it took them many years of defeat and reversal, and these are the defeat years of defeat and reversal. With collapse of socialism in China in 1976, we entered a long period of descent. Right now, the descent is over because capitalist triumphalism is gone. Crisis is there since 2007. It is not, budging, despite all claims of the likes of, Friedman and Stiglitz that it will go away after 5 years, after 7 years. It is not going away. And that triumphalism of capitalism, that, hysteric clamor of ultimate victory of capitalism, end of history and the last man, Francis Fukuyama, that is gone. Fukuyama a few years back said, present liberal bourgeois order faces two enemies, Islamic fundamentalism and Maoism. Islamic fundamentalism is their product, so let's not bother about that. The only serious enemy the bourgeois system is faced with today is considered by Francis Fukuyama is Marxism. So we are, right now that descent is over, but the ascent is yet to begin. So in a way, we are in the valley of historical time. So we can hope that this century, the coming century, not the coming century, this ongoing century will witness new round of proletarian revolutions. But in the high time of identity politics, we certainly could not have witnessed any major revolution because identity politics was precisely the product of this period of defeat and reversal. It is actually the logical consequence of this period of defeat and reversal and pessimism. And on that, मलबे को क्या बोलते हैं? Ruins and debris of old working class movement, these pernicious weeds were grown. So they will be cut off with new revolutions. Along with them, obviously we did not witness any trend-setting revolution as such. Secondly, information is one-sided. Yes, it is true, but it assumes that there can be an information which is above positions. See, there cannot be an information which has no class prejudice. Our basic question should be, what is our class prejudice? Not whether you can find an information completely untainted by any class prejudice. Generally, the truth of every historical age is represented by the progressive and revolutionary class of that age. When Voltaire, Diderot and Rousseau and Hobbes, Locke, they talked about equality, freedom, brotherhood and all of that, those ideas were the truth of that age and they were revolutionary. Engels writes in Socialism, Utopian and Scientific that when capitalism actually came into power, it was realized that the philosophers were talking about ideal equality, freedom and brotherhood, but when bourgeoisie realized its rule, it materialized as the equality of exchange, the freedom to sell and buy, and the brotherhood of capitalists. So that's how an idea degenerates historically, but every age has its own correct ideas. So we need to understand, we should not find the idea which is above all class positions, no bias. This itself is a bias. This search and yearning for an idea with no bias itself constitutes a bias and prejudice. So we are animals of class society and we exist as member of this or that class. That is our social class. But we can transcend the boundaries of our social class by taking revolutionary political position. That is our political class. For example, Marx, Engels, Lenin, they were not sons of workers. They actually came from middle class, most of them, except Stalin, who came from working class. All of the great teachers, Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, Lenin, Mao, they came from middle class, petty bourgeois class. So their social class was petty bourgeois, but their political class was proletariat because they consciously assumed the position of proletariat. So in that sense, we have to take positions. We can't look for a totally unbiased information. One has to take the side of truth of that age.
Hi, this is Abhinav. I work in IT. I don't have a very deep knowledge of social sciences, only bits and pieces of newspaper articles here and there. So most of the newspaper articles or whatever I read about all the world governments, and I hear very less criticism of the way Europeans run their government. Like if you talk about US, we talk about very high income inequalities and people on the very low economic jobs, very low paying jobs, working paycheck to paycheck with no health insurance and yeah, of course we know the Indian problems, and when it comes to China, the human right abuses and so on. So as a Marxist, do you have anything to criticize about the way Europeans, I mean the Western European model, like Germany, France, Britain, and so like it seems like a paradise, like there's health insurance by the government, there are workers' rights recognized, and you have even like paid vacations
Yes.
for workers, and yeah, it looks like paradise. I mean, what can I'm like as a person from India, I'm like, if I have to choose something, oh, this is something that I can look up to, like something India could become like that. So, do you find anything wrong with that system? Like as a Marxist, how do you criticize that system? Does it have any shortcomings?
Yes. I mean, first of all, since 1970s and 80s, the processes of contractualization, casualization, and informalization is going on even in the northwestern world, including Germany, France. Less so in Scandinavian countries, less so maybe in France and Germany. But if you talk about entire Europe, including France and Germany, and the US, everywhere poverty levels have risen. Everywhere informalization and casualization of workers is going on. But still, yes, it is true that it is much better than all the so-called third world countries like India, even China, and Asian, African countries, Latin American countries. The reason for that is implicit precisely in the world capitalist system. You see, Marx himself talked about the English working class, Marx and Engels, and they said that on the basis of the imperialist loot and plunder throughout the world, the English bourgeoisie has been able to bribe a section of the English working class, a considerably large section of the working class, and there has been a process of bourgeoisification of a considerable portion of English working class, and that is why it is not taking radical political positions as far as the Irish national liberation struggle is concerned, or the liberation of the colonies like India and other British colonies are concerned. The British Labour Party, which represented the bulk of the British working class and the organized workers' movement in Britain, never took any progressive position on all the important political, national and international issues of the time. The reason was that even though in terms of social class, these were workers, but they were constituting what Lenin later called labor aristocracy. But you can have a paradise for even a considerable portion of working class in these imperialist countries because of the plight and plunder and loot of countries like India. If you subtract the imperialist loot, exploitation and plunder by these multinational companies residing in these centers of global capitalism in the northwestern Atlantic world, you will find that these walls will collapse. So it is us who are, from whom surplus has been extracted and transferred to these countries, so that the bourgeoisie of Germany or France or Scandinavian countries can, even before the worker can say long live revolution, it will put a note ki gaddi in its mouth. So that is how by providing these social security, they keep calm at their house. But now the global crisis is reaching a dimension that now this paradise also is collapsing. That is why we are witnessing afresh, anew, a rise of radical workers' movement and students' movement. And that is why, but these movements can take a right turn or left turn. For example, the white working class of America could not have imagined before 1990 or 2000 that all the cherished benefits, social privileges that it enjoyed, that you just mentioned, I mean paid leave, sick leave, bonus, double rate overtime, etc., etc., and voluntary overtime, etc. All these rights that the working class won over through long struggles, American working class never imagined that these rights will be taken away. And once these rights started being taken away, there was a dual potential. One, had there been a revolutionary communist party, it would have revealed the truth of why US capitalism is no longer able to provide the bulk of its working class with all the privileges and benefits that it used to provide since the golden era up till Reaganomics period. But since there was no such party which could reveal the true reason behind the hardships of a working class in the US, Trump created a false enemy. The extreme right wing, that look, these mulatto, Chicano, Latinos and Asians, they are taking away your job. And we will make America great again. We'll bring back the factories which have been transferred from Detroit and we'll make it the car manufacturing capital of the world again, etc., etc. So that white working class, its dissatisfaction and disgruntlement, which had a dual potential, progressive and regressive. But any potential, in order to be realized, needs a catalyst, vanguard, an agent. Since the revolutionary agent was absent and since the reactionary agent was present, Trump came to power. And Biden is no different so far as economic policies are concerned. So in that sense, the system there is also capitalist. But as Lenin said, capitalist development by nature is unequal. Capitalism cannot develop in terms of quantity and quality equally throughout the world. It will always be unequal. It's a competitive system constantly creating inequality. So that inequality is what characterizes the present world economy. There are imperialist countries which are plundering and exploiting entire world even after the process of decolonization has been completed. Now no colonies are there, no neo-colonies are there, except a few like Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua. But apart from those, there are no major country with diversified economy today in the world is a neo-colony or semi-colony or colony. But even then, Indian bourgeoisie collaborates with imperialist bourgeoisie because it's a quid pro quo relation. Indian bourgeoisie opens the door for market, allows foreign companies to invest capital here, but in collaboration with contracts of technology transfer after say 8 years, 10 years. That is how Hero Honda separated, all these companies, these technology transfer agreements were already there. So Indian bourgeoisie wants capital in technology. Imperialist bourgeoisie wants profitable investment opportunities and market. There is a quid pro quo. So what are they? For example, Indian bourgeoisie, a junior partner of imperialism. Not one imperialist country, but imperialism in general. So if US gives it technology and capital on better terms, it will take from US. If Putin is ready to give it, why not? Yes, please. So most of these countries have that kind of bourgeoisie, junior partner, not comprador. But yes, the question that you asked, you have to understand these inequality in interrelation. If you look metaphysically, it looks like यार वहाँ कितना बढ़िया सिस्टम है और यहाँ साला हम सड़ रहे हैं हिंदुस्तान में. हम सड़ रहे हैं इसीलिए वहाँ उतना बढ़िया सिस्टम है. You have to understand the causal link. We are being exploited like hell. That is why they are happy there. That is why they have their paradise. So anything which I have to say about the criticism of that system are the same things which I would say about the criticism of capitalist system here. Both are capitalist system. Their geopolitical location is different in global order. That's all.
Hello. My name is 𝐓𝐚𝐥𝐤.
Yeah.
So what's your take on RWPI's position on farmers' protest, considering the identities of farmers and identities?
See, farmers' protest, our position has nothing to do with the social identity of the farmers, rather more to their class position. I mean, the farmers, our position, if those who don't know, our position was that we supported the democratic right of the farmers' movement to protest, but we did not support their charter of demand. Because many people have misarticulated our position as opposing the movement. No, we don't oppose it. The movement, they have the right to do movement. They have the right to protest. And it is our right not to agree with the charter of the movement. The charter of the movement was basically for increase of MSP, as you know. And we say that MSP is basically a surplus profit, a monopoly profit determined by a state monopoly price, determined by the government. Going by the concrete data, political economy data, you can clearly show that the market prices will always be lower than the prices of food grains fixed by the MSP. And that is why we say that in terms of Marxist political economy, this monopoly price is creating a surplus profit that is being pocketed by the rich farmer class, the capitalist farmer class, tenant as well as owner farmer class, and the capitalist landlord class. So we oppose this surplus profit because, as any student of economics knows, whenever there is the price of a commodity ensures a surplus profit over and above average profit, it increases inflationary pressure because the prices are above the price level which would have given average profit. It is above that price level, therefore it gives a surplus profit over and above average profit. And that is the demand of the farmer, kulak, capitalist farmer and kulaks of India. So irrespective of the fact that many poor peasants also participated in the movement because they have to live in the same village. If you go to Punjab and Haryana, most of these poor peasants and agricultural workers came to Singhu border and Tikri border, and we went there as journalists to take interviews, and we saw it because they were indebted to the rich farmers. And the Jat panchayats and Jat panchayats in villages of Punjab and Haryana, they fixed jurmana, fines on those households who were not willing to send people to Singhu border and Tikri border for MSP. So they had to come. And the second reason why some of them came was the lack of political consciousness. They thought ki, okay, we are also selling in the APMC mandi, so we will also get more profit. But the poor peasants could not understand that if MSP increases the price of food grains, and those peasants who are principal buyers of food grains, not principal sellers of food grains, they will lose if the prices of agricultural products increase. You see, I mean, if for example, I am a Punjabi poor peasant, I have access to the Sarkari Mandi, the Sarkari market, where I can sell my produce on the MSP, right? But I produce a little bit of, say, rice, but I have to buy more food grains throughout the year from the market than I am selling in the market. If I am principal buyer of food grains, not principal seller of food grain, then any rise in the prices of food grains will affect me adversely. It won't benefit me. So a lot of poor peasants understood this fact, and a lot of poor peasants did not understand this fact. So some of those who did not understand this fact also went due to caste affiliations and lack of political consciousness and not understanding that demand for MSP does not represent their class interests. So there are multiple dimensions of the whole thing, and why the farmers movement petered out. It petered out precisely because it lacked any solid social base. Even today, if you go to, and we have been to Haryana and Punjab recently and met many, visited many villages, met many farmers and poor peasants and agricultural workers. Poor peasants and agricultural workers are very clear that this movement doesn't represent us. We asked them, why did you go to Singhu border? So he said कि गांव में तो रहेंगे ना साहब, गांव छोड़ के तो जा नहीं सकते. And there the hegemony of rich Jat farmers and Jat farmers in Haryana and Punjab, that is solidly established through their khap panchayats. If you want to live in the village, you will have to participate in the rich farmers struggle. Yeah, and at the same time when the rich farmers were demanding higher MSP, at the same time they put wage caps on the wages of agricultural laborers in their villages. And they even threatened those farmers who were willing to pay more wages and imposed fines on them. So on the one hand, they want surplus profit, and at the same time, the wages of the agricultural workers, most of whom are Dalits, by the way, in Punjab and Haryana, must be depressed. They put an upper limit on the wage. So in terms of identity, yes, there was a caste dynamics also involved, but that was not the principal thing as far as I can see. I think it was more about the political economy of Kulak agriculture in Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Northern Rajasthan, which fueled the movement. And since inherently it lacked a consolidated base of social props, it petered out. It won't rise again in the same way, without accommodating the demands of poor peasants and agricultural workers. They might tactically accommodate some of the demands of poor peasants and workers. For example, why the rich farmers movement never demanded that there should be reach of poor peasants to institutional credit? Because they are also usurers in the villages. They give credit to these farmers on interest rates of 25%, 30%, like that. And poor peasants don't have access to any institutional credit institution because they are not sufficiently good citizen, because they don't have a good credit history. So yeah.
So when you say rich farmer, right, what would be his land holding?
Land holdings, generally, I mean, land holding size will differ for rich farmers in different parts of India due to different levels of productivity.
I mean, in this area, like in Punjab.
In this area, you can say anything above 3-4 hectares comes in upper middle. From there, upper middle farmer starts in Punjab and Haryana. But same amount of land in say Eastern UP might belong to a poor peasant because of lower level of productivity and productive forces. So it depends on intensity of investment of capital and the natural fertility of land. Both have to be taken into account.
So less than 10 acres.
Yes. No, 4 hectare is, less than 10 acres. Yeah. I mean, most of the poor peasants, they own less than 2 hectares of land. But we should not go by the definition of size of land holding. We should go by the question whether a farmer regularly exploits wage labor or not. That is the line of demarcation between the capitalist farmer and poor peasants. Capitalist farmer is one who regularly employs and exploits wage labor. And as such, he is a capitalist farmer. Capitalist by definition is one who invests capital to appropriate surplus value. So whether it is in manufacturing or agricultural doesn't matter. Marx doesn't make a distinction on the basis of that. But yes, we should make a distinction not according to land holding size, because it might be a little misleading if you take an all India picture. But a class demarcation line is more accurate.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the talk. I'm Ajay. I'm a math student. Yeah, actually, I want to take 2 statements from your talk. One is, you said that we have to align with the state to fight against the oppression.
No, I didn't say.
Yeah, I mean, that's from your
They
talk.
say.
Yeah, okay. Someone has said that.
Yeah.
But what if state is the oppressor? Like, actually, I have listened to a speech about Rana Ayub. She was a journalist.
Yeah,
and she recently received the highest US Press Freedom Award. She had a talk on Gujarat rights and all those things. Yeah, what happens to the press freedom? Because here the state is the oppressor. That is one thing. And the second thing is, another statement from your talk. Only a victim should speak about the oppression. Suppose, and you say, from your talk, the same statement says that all others are beneficiaries. Okay, what's your counter on Raja Rammohan Roy's Sati Sahagamana movement? I mean, he has no intent, he has no any...
I did not say that.
No.
I was criticizing that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, okay, what's your take? I mean, okay, we are fighting against the oppression, but what's the motive? I mean, we are discussed about Marxism, but why are we here? I mean, what's the need for the Marxism in the 21st century? That's what my question is.
So the last question is a very big question. No, first of all, here the state is oppressor. No, everywhere the state is oppressor. Not only in India, in every country, it is the state which represents the interests of ruling class, which exploits and oppresses working masses. That is my position. I was quoting Foucault, Mauve and Laclau. They said that state can become an ally in your struggle against social oppression, because all social oppressions are not maintained by state. In fact, state is not responsible for any social oppression. Social oppression, you are responsible for social oppression. That's what they say. We say that no, it is the state which breeds and maintains and sustains social oppression, different social oppression and class exploitation, and it is without exception true for every country, because state by definition is instrument of exploitation and domination, and everywhere state is oppressor. And in those cases, what should we do? We should organize the masses who are the victims of exploitation and oppression, and those who are, even if not victims of oppression, who are justice loving, who are egalitarian, and who want to fight against oppression and exploitation. Jyotiba Phule said, if someone joins your struggle, don't ask his caste. This is a very important statement. So if someone joins your struggle, don't ask about his caste and sex and gender and nationality and language. He is joining you on a political program, a revolutionary political program, and he is assuming a political class position. So in that sense, yes. Other is that I also did not say that only victim. Foucault says that only victim can. Identity politics people say that only victims can speak about their oppression. No one else can. Ram Mohan Rai was an enlightened intellectual who, under the influence of ideals of enlightenment modernity, opposed the backward ideas prevalent in the Indian society, and he did a good thing in that, even though in terms of class he was a landlord, indigo landlord, and ruthlessly exploited his agricultural laborers. But it happens in societies in transition when there is an enlightened intelligentsia which first always sprouts from among the aristocratic classes, who themselves are oppressors and exploiters. But that is how the autonomy of ideology functions. Last, how Marxism is relevant in 21st century, I would say in the same way in which all scientific theories and principles are relevant irrespective of age. It doesn't really matter whether the theory of gravity was discovered in 18th century or 19th century. One cannot say it was discovered 200 years ago, so I'll go on the roof and jump to test whether it still works or not. You might end up in a morgue or a hospital. So about science, you have to understand that the relevance of science remains till the time that entity is there whose laws of motion that science discovers. So as long as the entity which displays the behavior of gravity is there, laws of gravitation will remain. As long as classes and class society exploitation and oppression remains, Marxism will not only remain relevant, it will become increasingly more relevant.
My name is Swapnendu. My question is that what is your views on the left-wing governments that came in Latin America in the past few years, and considering their vulnerability to the imperialist coups as well as funding by the imperialist capitalists of those imperialist states, how do you see this recent tide of these left-wing governments? Do they have an anti-imperialist figure, and does these have any kind of implications in other third world countries' communist movements?
Yeah. So it's a very interesting question. I mean, the whole movement of Bolivarian alternative, my own assessment from an ML perspective would be that we cannot consider, first of all, it as a communist movement. Basically, these movements have a broad social base because of the deep-rooted anti-imperialist sentiment in the entire Latin America. It is the backyard of the boss of world imperialism, US, and it has seen a lot of colonial, neo-colonial exploitation, oppression, repression in the past, and the people just simply hate America. I have many friends. Anybody who has friends from Latin America knows that they, hate with their guts the American imperialism. So anything which has a anti-imperialist position finds resonance in Latin American masses, and the recent rise of these what has been called pink tide or Bolivarian alternative Chavez style governments. The reason is two. One is this anti-imperialist sentiment. Two, they are, in terms of economic program, they never go against welfarism and social democracy. So basically, they are not nationalizing all the factories, or they are not collectivizing the agriculture. Even Allende was more radical than, say, Chavez or Maduro or Lula, or that Bolivian guy, Evo Morales. So Allende was more radical than that, even though Allende himself was a social democrat, a socialist, and he was an honest guy, a consistent anti-imperialist. There is no doubt about it. And he was martyred fighting in the presidential palace with a gun in his hand against the coup makers and American imperialism. But when he came to power, most of the Marxists in Chile said that arm the people. If you are going to implement the socialist program, arm the people, because people have voted you to power. You have not unleashed their revolutionary initiative. They have passively voted you to power, and they will passively see you die. You cannot heroically defend socialism in Chile, immediately arm the people. He refused. He said, no, there is no need for arming, you are asking for anarchy, etc., etc. And ultimately, that's what happened. The coup happened, Allende died fighting, thousands of people died in Santiago Stadium, all the supporters of Allende. So that was a lesson in Lenin's theory of state and revolution, that you cannot lay hold of a ready-made bourgeois state machinery and use it for the purpose of socialist building. Even if you win, for example, I belong to a communist party, RWPI, and we do participate in elections tactically. We tactically make use of bourgeois elections and parliaments. In order to bring bourgeois elections and parliaments to a point of impossibility, you need to make a tactical intervention in them. You cannot just give a call of boycott of elections when nobody listens to you. You go there and expose the limits of bourgeois democracy, and in that sense, it is a tactical intervention, not strategic, because we don't believe that by winning elections you can bring socialism. So, but suppose a hypothetical scenario. A few years down the line, we win the elections in Lok Sabha and we form the government. Would it be revolution? No. The immediate first step would be to arm the people for the defense of socialist program, implementation of socialist program, and then there will inevitably be a revolutionary civil war, which will determine whether the bourgeois state is smashed or not. That is something which we learned from the Chilean example, and these are even less radical governments. These can be called, and the term that I generally use for them is welfarist inverted Bonapartist regimes based on the social base of deep feeling of anti-imperialism. Bonapartist because here a Bonaparte-like figure is there, but it is not like regressive Bonaparte of the 19th century. It's a progressive Bonapartism based on welfarist economics and participatory democracy, the concept of, in double quotes, participatory democracy, and based on the popular hatred towards imperialism. So they are prone to coup and collapse because they don't open the popular revolutionary initiative of the masses. That can happen. Soviet Union was able to defend Soviet power against encirclement of the 14 of the most powerful imperialist countries, because it was led by a revolutionary party, and it unleashed and opened the revolutionary initiative of the masses who were willing to sacrifice their lives to save socialism. And that cannot happen in a bourgeois election. That is a very passive process. So in that sense, yeah, but it demands a very detailed discussion, your question. We can have that discussion later also.
My name is Naeem, and so I have a quick bunch of questions. I'm just going to say it. First of all, it looks like a very academic, full of citation and references. There are a lot of name droppings that I have seen, and it's also laborious work. So thank you for that. My question is related to the individual in a society. How does he going to react to the multiple identities that he wears? So you also briefly mentioned about it. So which identity he's going to wear is always been the question. The other one, the other my your friend has asked about the state. The role of state actually is very pervasive in the area in which that we live. So how do we counter the whole part of the and role of the state as such? The last one is about there are few developments that have happened in the recent times where the Supreme Court judgment about the EWS. It's also a very, very important judgment, 3:2 judgment that was given. So a new identity is also emerging where the upper caste are usurping all these rights which were supposed to be given to the marginalized or exploitative castes. So thank you.
I think this question, which identity, as Naeem asked, which identity one prefers, it depends on which identity is made into a principal site of oppression. That identity, otherwise, unless and until no identity for you is a site of oppression for you, you don't even raise this question, which is my primary identity. The very question is, the point of departure of this question is when you are oppressed socially on the basis of one of the identity. Only then this question, as Eric Hobsbawm said, that it comes naturally to human beings and generally people don't bother about it. And that is why in 1960, 54% Americans couldn't tell what is their principal identity. They couldn't tell their ethnic origin or linguistic origin or anything. They began to talk about this, their principal identity, their preferred identity, only when some kind of social oppression was inflicted upon them. So naturally, you generally don't even think about it unless and until you are oppressed on the basis of any particular identity. The role of state, you are true, is very pervasive in every sense of the term. From the surveillance state that has developed with all of us know what is happening with the spyware and everything, and the big brother is always watching. But we need not to be afraid about it, because there is a paranoia also created that we can't resist. There is a tendency of statolatry that we can't win and we can't resist, because state is everywhere and it always knows everything. So it's omnicognizant. It knows everything before it happens, something like that. And this image has also been perpetuated by the Hollywood culture industry. You can't do anything. You see the Matrix film, you see the film made on Snowden. All these films create this fear of state. But I think that when masses at large rise up in revolt, ये सब चीजें धरी की धरी रह जाती हैं. वो सर्वेल कर, वो देयर इज अ पोएम बाय ब्रेस्ट कि जनरल तुम्हारा टैंक बहुत मजबूत है लेकिन इसमें एक कमी है, इसको आदमी चलाता है. Their surveillance apparatus also is run by people. Wage earners, what are they who are doing this surveilling? They are wage laborers. And obviously we'll also organize them eventually. So one of the demands raised by communists in all countries is police's right to unionize. And I think it is a very correct demand. Because most of the lower level constables, they are sons and daughters of workers and poor peasants. They don't constitute the ruling class within the police. So in that sense, I think the way to counter state is only one: boldly arousing, mobilizing and organizing the masses on the real material issues of their lives. That's how all of this becomes futile. As Mao said, हथियारों के बड़े से बड़े जखीरे जनता के महासमुंदर में डूब जाया करते हैं. So they know they can't defeat us. That is why they always tell that you can't defeat us. And even after the collapse of socialism, after so many years, the culture industry of bourgeoisie hasn't tired in their tirade against Marxism and socialism. अब मर गया Marxism तो इतना परेशान क्यों? है ना? So And about EWS judgment, yes, that is true. That is what they did. The same thing was done by Nitish Kumar, creating a new identity of Mahadalit. And this is a slightly different thing, because here, this is such a funny thing. Someone earning 8 lakh rupees per annum, up to 8 lakh rupees per annum, is economically weaker section. I would love to be in that economically weaker section. That means 64 or 65,000 rupees per month. And who will then get the benefit of this? Not the poorer sections among the non-Dalit castes. The middle and upper middle class, and BJP has done it right now because in view of the 24 general election. It wants to consolidate its Agda vote, because Agda vote is distributing in Hindi Patti. So the Agda vote, I mean Brahmin, Thakur, upper caste vote, it is a move to consolidate and polarize their upper caste vote bank among the middle and upper middle class in the upper caste, in the Hindi Patti and elsewhere also. So it is certainly not going to ensure reservation for the real poor working masses of the non-Dalit castes, and it is certainly going to help the upper middle class and middle class within the Savarn caste, and that will in turn give political benefits to BJP in the 24 election. So basically this move is simply for that. So it must be opposed. I mean, it is totally, our position is very clear. Our position is that you introduce how so many reservations and new categories and new identities for reservation in jobs and employment. When the generation of government jobs, rate of generation of government jobs is in negative, what is the point? Then for reservation, we are fighting for reservation is like fighting for something which is not even there. Privatization of education, the non-generation of government, negative generation of government job, negative rate of generation of government jobs makes this whole question a non-issue. So in the words of Frederick Douglass, the black left activist, it is only one thing: divide all to conquer each. That is what they are doing through the politics of reservation. Our demand is free and equal education for all, and employment for all should be made the fundamental right and added in the constitution. That they will not do. That is why directive principle is there in constitution. वो बिल्कुल बेवकूफ बनाने के लिए है. State shall do this. State shall give jobs to all. State shall give education to all. What if state doesn't? You can't do anything. So this is the true fraudulent character of Indian constitution. बेवकूफ बनाना.
So that is the final question, and then.
So it's really nice. So I think like what your speech basically. I've been listening to Vivek Chibber, who has been talking about on the same lines, like the identity is not what we really want. We want to mobilize class, right? So similarly, I think there should be a movement. I think there is already a movement too, but even the environment movement too. So environment movement, I personally feel it's a class movement too. But still, there too there is a lot of division. Just like the identity, which is basically breaking the fight against the class exploitation. So similarly, could you enlighten us on that part if the time is there? How Marxism is incorporating the environmental movement as a class movement or as a class interest.
Environment has been there in the Marxist thinking right since beginning. One of the critique Marx made of Adam Smith is that Adam Smith said that the source of all wealth is labor. Marx said no, the source of all value is labor, the source of all wealth is labor and nature, and capitalism depends on the exploitation of labor and plunder of nature, so that the whole social metabolism is affected. This is from Capital, by the way. So it is already there in Marxist thinking. It's just that Marxists forgot it. Some Marxists. Secondly, most of the environmental activism which is happening, objectively speaking, yes, it is a class struggle. But in the words of Jesus, they don't know what they are doing. They don't theorize it as class struggle. So RA movement, forest movement, we are active in RA forest movement. There, whenever we raise the slogans against Modi government or fascism or corporate plunder, they said, नहीं, ये नारा मत लगाओ यार, ये किसी के खिलाफ नारा मत लगाओ. तो हमने कहा फिर आए क्यों? If you don't want, who is the enemy? You want to save forest. Someone is destroying that forest. Who is that? If you don't identify the enemy, what is the point of assembling here? So that is why someone said, I forgot her name, she was his name. I think he said that environmentalism with the environmental struggles without class struggle is gardening.
It was Brazilian
Indigenous leader, yeah. Yes, 𝐓𝐚𝐿. Yeah, so without class struggle, environmental struggles are gardening. So one has to identify, and that is there in Marxism already. And today, I totally agree, we must proactively raise this issue. Because environmental issues affecting everyone, it is attracting a lot of students and youth and intelligentsia. And communists should, definitely raise this issue with most force and organize the masses on these issues.
Yes, this myriad auction, auction.
Yeah.
Is one of his forces, usually workers are the grave diggers of capitalism.
Yeah.
So now, climate change is the grave diggers of capitalism. So therefore, it's very pertinent.
Yeah, but climate change is not a subjective force. Subjective force is proletariat. Climate change is objective phenomenon due to capitalist loot and plunder. Still, the grave digger is working class.
Yeah.
So that is where he goes astray.
Okay, so now we are now done with the time. No? Okay, so thank you very much, and I think more than 3 hours and such a brilliant talk and discussion. And I'm sure everyone has a lot to learn, and more importantly, many questions, right? So of course, not all questions would have been answered, but certainly some new questions
could have been.
So I think you all have given your contacts. We can do one thing, we can form some kind of group so that we can carry on these discussions, and certainly we'll organize such kind of discussions in near future. We'll keep informing about all those events, and of course we are not just for debates and discussion. So we'll try to organize masses in Hyderabad, so all of you are welcome in all such activities. So we'll form that group and inform them. So with this, I think let's conclude today's discussion. But the informal discussion can carry on. Abhinav will be here for some time. So those of you who want to discuss something with Abhinav, I think you can. And thank you, Lamakaan, for giving us this wonderful opportunity and time to just discuss in such a great detail. Thank you. Okay.